What is up, everybody? Obviously, I am joined by the Garrett Hartle. I'm not going to do my usual spiel where we do a bunch of BSing because we're already Garrett and I just popped in and we're already full on ready to get into a conversation. So let's just lean into this and go.
I thought we started 5 minutes ago, and Zach said
yeah,
we
I know.
weren't live. So
I know. I literally had to cut you off. I was like, wait, we're not quite live yet. So literally just in the nick of time. So yeah, man, it's good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, where's Bradley though? I mean, I thought this was the Bradley and Zach show.
Yeah, so you know how that goes. No, so Bradley actually is not here for a really good reason. He's actually off doing some animal education stuff for a birthday party, and it's actually like a high school age party. Like the kid's 18 or 19 years old, I think he said. And so he was bringing 12 different animals, 8 different species and a bunch of different stuff, and the kid's super stoked about it. So. I'm really excited for him to get back in and join us. He'll be a little bit late, so he will be here though.
I love that. I used to do a lot of reptile birthday parties, a lot.
Yeah.
And people always think of it like, oh, we're gonna do reptile party for my kids. You always get the 6-year-olds, the 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
But the really good ones, I've done a few now that were high school age, college age, or even at high schools or colleges and stuff. Yeah. Those are the ones that really are great. I don't know why they don't think are reptiles a little kids thing? What is it with that?
Yeah, it's a really
for me it's not
angle.
Maybe it's a kids thing and you and I just never outgrew it. I don't know.
That's the thing, right? And that's what I was gonna say. I think it's perspective, because if somebody threw me a birthday party, if anybody's planning a surprise 34th birthday party for me, give me a reptile birthday, I'll be happy. I'll be content. I won't complain.
Absolutely. Yeah, I almost had my bachelor party at Prehistoric Pets. That was before I worked there. Yeah.
Nothing about that surprises me.
Yeah, we kind of sort of technically did. Jay Brewer took us out on his boat and stuff like that with a bunch of guys, and we went camping out on the beach or whatever. But I was like, no, you gotta get some staff together and we'll do a reptile party. It'll be great. And we didn't end up going that far, but yeah, I don't know. I never outgrew it. I really enjoy the college stuff and the older kids. There's a lot more, because the little kids, they just don't have the attention span. I think they love it. They have a great time, but wow, and the reptiles definitely, they'll listen to you if you have an animal in your hand. So there's that. Mm-hmm. But they don't have the same attention span that an older person does, where you can really kind of dig deep and figure out what's really cool about each animal. Yeah. Versus just, that's awesome, show me the next one, what else you got,
Right,
so.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was talking to him about, because he was kind of nervous, and again, we won't dwell on this too long, but I was like, dude, that age, that's the best. I was like, you can really have an impact. These are kids that are getting ready to go to college, if that's their path they choose, things like that's tremendous. Those are the people that you want. And his friends coming in, I was like, those are the people. The people that maybe aren't expecting what they're about to experience. So that's
I had a whole routine of breeding jokes too. We would always get the camera, come on, let's see if it's a boy or a girl. Up until you're 14, I always just say, when people ask, how do you tell if a snake is a boy or a girl? I say, well, you ask their mom. You know what I mean? But now that you guys are here, really I can show you really what's up. You know what I mean? Burp, there it is. Oh, They got two? No way.
And
how does that make you feel?
Can I say that's the stuff I love? Is everybody has their little angle of how they deal with how they respond to certain things with these with doing presentations. Earl was teaching me.
Yeah, they just
Earl was teaching me some little things. And I was like, man, that's such a neat little trick, and it works so well. So that stuff's exciting.
You end up being the announcer on the safari cruise at Disneyland or whatever. Everyone's got their little spin on it. You know what I mean?
Right. So. Yes, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Well, anyways, let's dive into you, brother. So obviously, Dwarf and Super Dwarf Retics, that's your gig. That's how I met you. That's how I think most people know you at this point. But man, your story is so much bigger than even just that, right? I love that you really focused on that, and I think that's where a lot of your success comes from. But walk us through, man, early life, the short version, right? Of, obviously, I've heard the story of alligators and bathtubs and, rattlesnakes under your bed.
Well, I grew up in the 90s, and my parents, I wasn't allowed to have reptiles, so I had crazy reptiles.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's how it works, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Always loved animals, allergic to everything with fur and feathers. So I had fish and reptiles. I used to was pretty big into fish and saltwater fish, but even then, it was never like reef tanks. For me, it was always like the giant, like I had baby bull sharks at one time.
That makes sense.
Like, like the what's the coolest animal I can put in here and stuff like that. So yeah, I did all that through high school. I started commercially breeding. Like the first reptile I bred, some people probably know this by now, but do you know what it is? What's my first species?
Crested geckos. Or leopard geckos.
I was going to say crested geckos were still extinct back then.
Sorry. Leopard geckos, yep.
No, that was not the first reptile I bred. No. That was the first reptile
I was so confident. Oh, okay. Well, that's, I was so confident.
The first reptile species I bred was a southern Pacific rattlesnake, because that's what we had. Right. Okay. I grew up in Southern California. That's what we had in the backyard. So I catch them. So I started breeding those. That was earlier. The leopard geckos came along when I was like 14. So my big little, I just remember punchlines from my life nowadays. So like my big punchline from that was I started breeding leopard geckos when I was 14. And I did it commercially for profit. I had a bunch of them. And back then the big thing was like blizzard lizard. I paid $5,000 for my blizzard lizard male. That was my big investment. Like my grandfather kind of went to that bank of love and helped me invest in this. And these are going to be your business practices. And he kind of worked through a little bit of the don't be an idiot stage with me. So it's good to have somebody like that. But from 14 to 16, I'd actually made enough money with the leopard geckos to buy my first car cash off the lot.
Yeah.
So I remember when I went in and I wanted to buy the car and they wouldn't let me test drive because I was 16. They're like, now you got to be 18 to test drive. And I was like, but I'm buying the car. Like
I'm still buying the car. Like I'm
going to buy the car and I'm not going to drive. I want to drive the car. I was getting a Toyota pickup. And so my grandfather's like, nah, we're going to fix this. So he gave me like his old briefcase, and this was very official looking, nice leather briefcase. And we went to the bank and we put all the stacks of cash for how much the truck would cost in the briefcase. And I walked up and I said, hey, I'd like to test drive that car. And I walked right up to the guy who denied me the first time. Right. He's like, we already been through this, kid. You can't do it. And I threw the briefcase up on the thing. I flipped the latches, and it's like, flip it open. I got all this cash, and I was like, let's talk to your manager.
Right.
That's what my grandpa told me to do. And it worked. And the manager's like, yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Get out of here, you idiot. You know what I mean? To the sales guy.
You hear that? I've heard that story a couple times. Not yours specific, but I just mean like similar stories to guys that got ignored or shoot away or just whatever by dealership employees that like, oh, this guy doesn't have the money for this or whatever, and then they end up going back to that same dealer and buying the car in cash. No, it's definitely not.
Honestly, dude, like for those of us who are breeders in the reptile industry, you cannot discount anybody. And I mean, if the moral of that story tells you anything, like. I remember a great example. I'm talking to all these guys. We were in Tinley, and you're kind of typical reptile guy that at least wants you to think that he's going to be an investor. He's got some big heavy necklace on and the crisp hat like yours that you can tell like the bill was never folded at all. It's still got the sticker on it. He's got his fresh set of kicks on there, but he's like 40. And he just came out of his second divorce. You know what I mean? He's like,
you're describing my life. Be careful.
Show me everything. Show me everything. I want to see all this stuff. And so I was talking to some customers like that, and they're lined up. And there was a kid who was probably about 17 years old or something, and he looked like kind of a nerdy kid, a little bit overweight and stuff like that. He was just quietly waiting. Yeah. And these guys are like, I don't know, maybe I'll get this thing. $400, $500, and they're talking like it's big, big money they're spending or something. And the kid's like. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to erupt, but I want this one right here. And I was like, that's great, man. I want those ones too. That one's $5,000. And he's like, okay. And he just took the money out and handed it to me. And I was like, right on. You know what I mean? Like, wrote it up to him. And I was like, and then I said, I assume by the time you walk up and hand somebody $5,000 for a snake that you've done your research, you know how to take care of this thing. And he goes, oh, I've watched all your YouTube videos, and sorry I didn't talk earlier. I was just like a little bit like, oh my gosh, I saw the YouTube. You know what I mean? What I mean? Almost like
it is weird.
YouTube starstruck or whatever the case may be. But no, great kid, and we have a relationship to this day, and he takes good care of the animals, and he buys nice stuff, and you can't discount anybody in the reptile industry because the guy you think the least of might end up being your best friend and greatest customer. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, because he's the guy that has the real passion that meets you on that level, as opposed to maybe a pet customer, which again is fine. Like, we're not, by no means am I discrediting one customer or another. And I know you're not either. It's just a fact that, like, yeah, a lot of times those quiet people are, and like you said, they're also the easy customer that's like, I want to buy that animal for $5,000. Here's $5,000 cash.
that's the
I'll be
real
taking him
customer.
now.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're not there
Yep,
to
I've already
tire
done my
kick, and
research.
they don't talk
Yeah.
a lot because these
Nope.
other guys are trying to make you think that they have something to offer so that you'll give them some time of day. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But the truth is,
Absolutely.
I would say the best sellers, my favorite sellers, are the ones that give me the time of the day, whether I'm buying something or not. Those
Yeah.
are the people I actually want to get to know in the industry. It's not about the snakes in the boxes, it's about the people behind the table.
Yes.
So
Yes.
those are the people I really appreciate. And yeah, you don't know. Like, so one person that comes to mind is like Rob Christian from Nerd.
Yeah.
He's total kind of like punk looking guy, with the black hair and the beard and the big
Gauges and the whole nine,
ears and the tattoos and the scrawny guy wearing chick pants, stuff like that. And right. But then if you talk to the guy, he's like very introspective. He has a lot of wisdom. He loves kids and education. He lives for that kind of stuff. He's also one thing I'm not good at. He's very good at like navigating kind of like the political landscape of things.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of respect for that guy. And he looks like, on the outside, what culture kind of teaches us is not a respectable person, but it
That's
couldn't
a
be
really good
further
way to
from the
put that.
truth. So, and that's what I love about the reptile industry.
Yeah.
You get a lot of douchebags that look great and a bunch of great people that look douchey. You know what I mean? So
No, 100%. That was
you can't
super
prejudge
accurate.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very eloquently put. I appreciate that, because
Yeah.
I would try to make that same point and I would butcher it. So that's good, man. That's great. And,
Well, I'll
and
tell you
knowing
what.
Rob, I agree.
Oh yeah, those guys, Rob and Jeremy, was probably
Amazing
one of
people.
our favorites. My favorite podcast that Brian and I did at Searchable as Reptiles was those guys. Definitely top 3. So I mean, I've been on a lot of shows. People ask a lot of questions. I think it was From the Ground Up. Reptiles has like my entire background story, like living in Indonesia when the tsunami hit and stuff like that. All the different breeding ventures that I've done.
Yeah.
Some of the kind of crazy, like living out of a truck for a year and a half, like crazy personal life story stuff.
That same Toyota truck, right? The one you bought.
Yeah. That was I put like 350,000 miles on that bad boy.
Yeah.
Her name was Michelle. And then I've been on other people's podcasts where they're talking about like what's the future of super doors, what are we doing for the reptile industry, how do you do this kind of marketing thing because with the super doors, we've really helped to build an industry that was very underappreciated. And oh my gosh, with reptiles, there's so many underappreciated reptiles. You go to any reptile store or show, and I'm not against them. Like I said, I mean, my first thing was leopard geckos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never got into ball pythons, but I love boas and Morelia stuff and a lot of the kind of bigger or more popular thing. The bigger, more popular species. But what's really cool, kind of like that 10% though that's super underappreciated, nobody really knows about.
Yeah.
You might have the coolest on the planet sitting, you've never heard of it because YouTubers have it, or you know what I mean, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Or it's not from a commonly exported country. So a lot of people, like to talk about that, but I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about? What do you here to try to get out of me on this show?
Yeah.
You guys have a pretty good spread of people, and I know you and Bradley are both, both of you guys are very different, but both really good guys, authentic, you know what I mean, and interested in just everybody kind of being able to be the best possible version of themselves. So I was excited to have, that you guys are having me here on the show. So, because I love conversations with people like that. But what do you want to know? I'm an open book,
So the way that Bradley and I have kind of been angling the show lately, has been less about the animals and more about the people and things like that. Which and he's more about the animals. I try to kind of go from the other angle, right? I try to approach from the business aspect and things like that. And so what I would want to ask you, Garrett, is you kind of already answered a little bit. I loved what you said about your grandfather kind of like helping you out from the initial get-go with the leopard gecko stuff, and saying and kind of giving you that seed, right, and like guiding you the way. Would I be remiss to say that like that was a shaping moment for you, right? Like that, because that's what I heard when you were telling a story, I think with a different intention, but what I was hearing was like, wow, that explains a lot about why Garrett is the way that he is. Like, you have kind of been lucky, I think, to have been guided from an entrepreneurial standpoint from a young age. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Well, so none of my family were necessarily like my dad, my mom. They're not business owners. My grandfather wasn't a business owner. He was actually a traveling salesman. He would sell textbooks, and he used to be a principal and a teacher when he was younger. But I think what I learned out of that, and the thing that you do need to learn if you want to do, like, if you guys are going to have like any kind of reptile business, you need an entrepreneurial mindset. And there are things to understand about that. So what my grandfather taught me that day was that, people are going to judge you. They're not going to think very much of you. If you're getting into reptiles and you're like, hey, honey, let's quit our jobs and be reptile breeders now, everybody's going to tell you that's not a real thing. That's like, I want to be a rock star, or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, there's certainly very successful rock stars, but everyone's opinion is, but you're not going to be one. Right. So you're going to get turned away left and right on things. But I think what he taught me was you need to understand what someone else values and be able to speak their language. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm not talking about English versus Spanish. I'm talking about throw down the briefcase full of money and ask to see the manager, and you recognize your roadblock, but you need to see beyond it. The first time I went to the dealership, they shut me down and I was all dejected and sad. And I was like, I don't even know if I want to buy this car now. I've been working for years to get my own money to do this. I had to obviously pay my grandfather back and then get all this other stuff. And then they shut me down because I'm a kid and I'm feeling down on myself. And I do hear a lot of reptile people like, oh, the market is turning down, or this or that, or this species will never last, or, like markets are crashing and this is that. And you're always the victim of circumstances, but I think what my grandfather taught me in that moment was like, no, you don't have to, that might've been what happened, but you don't need to accept that reality. You can go back and change it by speaking the language and understanding what people want. Right. And so instead of saying, hey world, look at me, I made these snakes and I learned how to take a good picture and I posted them on an online forum and I did all the right things and I'm emulating other people that I see, bring me success now, like, this is what I've done. I hope you all like it. Yeah. It's more than that. You need to like kind of go carve out a niche for yourself. There he is. What's up, Bradley? Yeah. Can't hear you.
Yeah, Turn we can't hear you very well, buddy. No, you're like almost completely muted.
Yeah, it might be better this way. It's okay. You're just here for the pretty face anyways, right, Bradley? Yeah, I don't know what the whole thing you're doing with your hands, but I'm not into that. Not sure what you're trying to say.
Love you, buddy. Good to see you, man.
Turn your volume up, plug something in, unplug something, unmute it.
It looks like he's still at the birthday party, is my best guess. No, you're super muffled.
Burr, burr, burr.
Wah, wah, wah. You didn't bring any headphones with you, did you? Nope.
Same thing.
Yeah, we got nothing. Miri was having this problem with me on StreamYard last time, so but it must be it must be an internet connection thing, like a bandwidth thing. Is my best guess. I don't know.
You would think that the video would have a harder time than the audio.
Yeah, you're right, because you're not lagging, Bradley. It's like it's up to speed. It's just super muffled. I can't hear you at all. It's like I don't know, like your mic's not picking it up. Yeah, he's still at the birthday party. Okay, cool. Well, just Bradley, let me know when you get done over there, brother, and we'll get you in here. Yeah.
He wants to give us a sneak peek.
The venue actually does look super interesting. So the whole thing looks super cool.
It actually looks really nice, like swanky.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
What's up, everybody? Happy birthday to whoever's birthday it is.
Yeah, you got snakes everywhere, blue lights.
Man,
this is like a high school nightclub full of snakes over here. Look at this,
dude. That's so killer. I freaking told you you're gonna have a blast, man. I knew it was gonna end up running longer than what you thought. So no, I'm stoked though. You're out there doing the boots on the ground. That's the good work.
Well, ask all the kids what their questions are for Garrett at Reach Out Reptiles. Not that they've ever heard of me, and then have them text it into Zach. So
yeah. Shoot me some text and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
All right, love you, buddy. I'm giving you the boot.
See ya.
All right, so
no, I think that was the big lesson. There wasn't really anything particular like business wise and this and that and how to do that. He just kind of, there were things I wanted to do where he's like, well, show me how that makes money, and I'm like, well, I really can't, but that's what I want to do. And he's like, well,
those are the important
these ones are making
right?
money over here, so maybe you should focus on those. And then it's just very basic kind of common sense thing. Even though a lot of people, they're trying to run their hobby and make money out of it. Yeah. And that's a tricky thing, because a hobby is something you enjoy. I don't think you need to make money at a hobby. It's something that you invest in yourself, your own, pursuit of happiness. Making money for me, at least when I was doing it as a hobby, was just so that I could fuel the fire, and afford the reptiles I really wanted.
Right.
So, yeah. So the rest of it was just don't take the regular answers for reality, and just go take some risks and do that kind of stuff.
And the reason I ask questions like that, Garrett, is because I don't know if I'm just weird, but when I hear things like that, I'm like, I hear something of more importance than what maybe a lot of people hear on the surface of that. Like for me, that I think that what he did for you was establish some confidence in yourself, right? Like some confidence in transactions, some confidence in the way to approach a buying and selling relationship. Like that. That's a tremendous lesson. Whether you took it as that or not, I think that's a big deal. That's the stuff that I love is hearing somebody tell a story and then trying to pick apart and maybe hone in on some details that as to why I think they're more important than what they might sound like on the surface. So that was kind of my takeaway.
I'll give you the kind of fast forward version, right? So
please,
all those years to this,
yep.
I had all kinds of random experiences with reptiles around the world, different companies, stuff like that. And my wife and I and our kids moved out here to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I still had some nice reptiles, mostly the Super Dwarf stuff that was like kind of significant, right? I had other just random things like a veiled chameleon or Madagascan leaf nose snakes and diving skinks and anything I thought was cool. Yeah. But the Super Dwarfs are like a tight, put together breeding group, right? And so I was always scared, and I think a lot of people in the hobby thing is like, I really need my paycheck. That feels like security to me.
Yes.
Paycheck coming from someone else. I know I can just go punch the clock at work, even though I hate it, or even if you don't hate it, it's just maybe not what you would be doing with your own time. Like if you had unlimited funds, would you go to work where you work? Like, no. Probably not. Most people probably not.
Yeah.
And so along the confidence thing, like a briefcase full of cash is what gave me the confidence the first time. It's not about the money, but it's like common sense. It's like you're not going to turn somebody away because of their age if they got a briefcase with enough cash in it to buy any one of these cars.
Yeah.
So if you can position yourself in a common sense thing, you really can't fail. So here's the other thing. I'll throw some numbers out there just so people can have some fun.
Please.
I haven't told anyone this, so you heard it here first, folks. But like we hatched. Well, I think there might have been a little bit of Instagram stuff, but we now have all the babies out of the eggs from our Reach Dreams line Calatoas. So that's significant. That's a breeding project that I partnered up with Forrest Fanning from Zoo Creatures to be able to do. And he was like, no, I hate all this morph crap and the locality crosses. And I never believe, he's like, I looked into the Super Dwarf and the locality retics, but I just never believe people. Everyone's always like, it's a such and such line, you know, like it's a Reach Out Reptiles line, or a Travis Kubis line, or a Jason Reed line, or a whoever. And he's like, well, who the hell is that person? And why does that mean that the animals came from that island? Because he was much more of like a purist and a conservation status, almost borderline academia, science-y guy in the end there. At least that's how he tooted his own horn.
Right.
And so he's like, no, I want like real Kalatoas. So how would I find those? Mm-hmm. And I helped him track a pair down of wild-caught imported Kalatoas from
Dan Maliri.
Yeah, Dan Maliri and his exporter there. But it wasn't just Dan Maliri. It was like the pair of Kalatoas that Dan Maliri kept in his office.
Yeah.
After he sold everybody else's and cherry picked them. And Dan used to always talk to me. He's like, I can never get these things to breed. I don't understand it. I can breed all these random, weird, obscure species. And here everyone's pumping out 10 clutches of retics a year, and I can't get mine to breed.
Right.
Kalatoas are tricky, you know what I mean? They're not the pure wild caught locality animals. They're really not that automatic. So, so anyway, he could never get him to do it. But Forrest and I went in on this pair, and now that they've hatched, I texted and I sent a picture to his manager there, Steven, and his wife, Desiree. Yeah, and one of the things that we were going to do with this bloodline, it's a little bit of a rabbit trail or whatever, but we were going to grow the bloodline out as like a business venture worth some money, and then make some money with the snakes, and then donate all of the proceeds. We're going to set up a trust fund for Lars, that's his son, and do it like as a charity thing. So that was something I was like, look, I can breed the snakes, I can run the business side of it. Let's make some money with the animals and send them over and do this. So I was texting Desiree today, and I was saying, listen, what I want to do is kind of like hold back the females between myself and them, and we want to grow these things up and produce clutches of these. So I'm not going to sell any females from this new bloodline, as much as people are probably like, I want Kalatoas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this bloodline of Kalatoas, we have I think there's 2 extra males in the clutch that we're going to sell after Steve and Des get theirs for the zoo, because they do want to establish legit Kalatoas. And they have an older one from me she's 2 years old now. They've just been waiting for the right male because they don't know, they want to do it right. Yeah. And so they want to get some animals from that. So anyways, it was funny because I did the math we have waiting lists on Kalatoas for a couple years. You know what I mean? Like anything I can possibly produce in the next couple of years will be sold before I can list it. And Kalatoas right now, we sell them. Other people sell them for more, like legit ones. If you see them for less, sometimes they're not legit, but I can attest to that. We sell them for $4,500 a pair. I know a lot of the guys that I would actually get Kalatoas are more like $5,000 a pair. So with the number of animals we did, I punched up the math. It was something like $28,000 in this little batch of snakes that crawled out. And so I was just trying to show Des, like, look, I'm not saying that for any way. Like, I know you still with me?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that in like sometimes people get weird about talking about money or whatever, things like that. But I mean, might as well throw it out there. Where else are you guys going to learn about this stuff? So
it's important.
It's a retail value, clutch valued at $28,000, and that's not like you have to try hard to sell it kind of clutch. It's a new bloodline of Kalatoas, and they're probably the prettiest Kalatoas, the parents that I've ever seen. We hatched Karampas that were similar, and all the animals were sold, money collected. The animals cost twice as much for Karampas within 24 hours. Yeah. So that's a cash money breeding. So it's not easy to get into that stuff, but once you are, here's the deal. You're a hobbyist, you're feeling scared because you've got this steady paycheck or whatever, but that's one clutch that's worth close to $30,000. A lot of people are making $30,000 in a year. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you make $60,000 or $90,000 a year. I don't know where you're on that scale, but you're talking about either 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 Kalatoas, and you can do that. And that's like cash money snakes. Like those snakes are very, very highly sought after. So much so that people are like, buying things they know is not legit and hoping that they are, because they're like, oh, but it's only $3,000 a pair and I just can't pass it up.
It's that much of a seller's market.
And I know it's not. Yeah, so there's a lot of people getting ripped off. But if you want long term and you can get a good bloodline, here's my thing. If you can make a briefcase that has $30,000, $60,000, or $90,000 in it, whatever level you're at, 120, 150, go as high as you want. That's 150. That's 1.5 females. It's a tidy little breeding group, right? That's like, you can put those in your little closet in your bedroom, and do that. Do that as a hobby. Do like Forrest did and hunt down those good bloodlines. Make that happen at any cost, because after you sell those babies and you've got your briefcase full of enough money that would pay you for a year, pay your salary for a year, it doesn't make sense to keep going back to your job anymore. We just said, if you had all the money that you needed, would you still go there? And so if you can do something like that, a lot of people try too hard to build stuff up. They're like, it's like my grandpa said, like, well, you're doing what you want. Can you show me how that you're doing over there can make this kind of money? Yeah. Because I think you should follow the money thing, right? So I don't know all the different, avenues within the reptile industry, but there are many. There are snakes, there are lizards, there are tortoises, there are iguanas, there are, you know what I mean? All kinds of things. And all of
those have their price levels within them. Like ball pythons can be from $50 to $50,000. I mean, for crazy stuff.
Well, but here's the other thing. There are some things that fluctuate a lot, and you're like, oh, the market, oh, woe is me, But then there's also species that are like, those have always been highly sought after.
Yes. And there's still people not working with a lot of those species that are known to be sought after.
Right. Well, and so the thing is, like, you could go buy that $15,000 ball python and this is not a jab at the ball python industry, because the ball python industry, like, I could make a lot of money breeding ball pythons. I'm sure of it. I probably wouldn't do it like almost anyone else, though. But, and I could tell you how I would do it in a minute, but if you care. But what I would do if I wanted to be a hobbyist and I didn't want a lot of maintenance and stuff like that, I mean, I might try to crack the code on Amazon Basin Emerald. Like, wow, those are like $5,000 to $10,000 a piece for nice ones. I would go down, I would hunt down, I would get stupid nice ones, and I would be best friends with the breeders, and I would get all their secrets, and I would crack the code on those suckers, and I would have enough that if I even had like a 30% success rate breeding them, I could make my salary in a year. That'd be my investment to get in. It would probably be a sizable investment,
Yeah.
But if you can get it and you can get it done,
if you can get those animals and make it work,
you're there. I would not be buying a pied and a clown and making double hets and growing them and thinking maybe 1 in 16 I can get a clown pied one day, and then I can do this and I can do that, and I would try. I don't want to try to build up over 20 years. What I want to do is stand on the shoulders of the guy who's been strengthening his bloodlines for 30 years, and I can buy my way to the top and move forward into a brave new future. And so it's really not hard. You just have to be, it's not. If you're a little bit position. Ballsy with your investment, then you can later be ballsy enough. And it's not even that scary to, like, for me, when I made the jump, I was working in marketing and business development in another industry. And my wife was like, you've made so much money for other people with reptiles. I know you've made money for yourself with reptiles before. You got this basement full of cool reptiles. And I bred them casually. A lot of people are like, oh, you stopped breeding for like 5 years. Where'd you go? Well, no, I didn't. I just made phone calls and sold the whole clutch instead of, go take it to a market. And nobody knew who I was. And I kind of liked that for a while.
Sure.
But yeah, it was my wife that pushed me. She's like, why don't you try it? So I said, okay, well, let me try and do this. I'll take 2 quarters. Let me work, kind of hustle a little bit, nights and weekends and stuff like that. And let me work for 2 quarters. That's 6 months. And I'm going to try, I think theoretically, calculator cowboy, as Forrest would put it, I should be able to make as much money as I make at my corporate job doing these reptiles with only putting in like an additional 20 hours a week. So let me try that and let's see what happens. And for 2 quarters, I matched my corporate salary,
Which is
doing
amazing.
like 20 hours a week. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, if I can, I'm doing it. I got my briefcase full of cash.
Yeah,
I
already
made as
happened.
much money working 20 hours a week with the reptiles as I was working probably 60 hours a week. Yeah, my corporate job.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I keep going to work? Because if I took those other 60 hours and I put all 80 hours of my work week, which I know a lot of people are like, holy crap, 80 hours or whatever, but I mean, you don't have to do it. I just do. But anyway, I put all that time into the reptiles. I probably could make a pretty big difference in the industry.
Time, valuation of money. And I wanted to ask you about this too, because this is another thing that I thought about specifically regarding you, literally today even. How huge was it for you to reach a position where you could start hiring people on to take over a lot of those tasks and get things to where they were 100% consistent and nothing, at least, well, not, I wouldn't say nothing, because I'm sure you probably could identify some areas where you wish you were stronger, but way fewer weaknesses. In other words, in terms of like, oh, well, I was so busy because I had to clean all the animals and feed all the animals myself, and I couldn't answer every message or whatever, and now you've got employees where they filled some of those gaps. How big of a change was that for you in terms of like your production, and do you think that is a large part of where your success has come in, to where you've got more time freed up? 'Cause I think for the same reason, because again, just that time valuation of money, where you can focus on where you really need to be, and you can kind of automate, at least in theory, those other processes by bringing somebody else on. Was that a major deal for you?
Do you want the answer that all the business YouTube guys will give you, or the reality answer?
No, I always want the real answer. Anytime I'm talking to you, Garrett, I always want the real answer for sure.
All right, so here's the real answer. First of all, my staff. I have the dream team. They're great. Like each one of them is really cool for where they're at. They all are specifically gifted, and I would go get the best bloodline of animals. Like Jessica is my office manager.
Yes.
And she was managing a place, and I was always like, wow, that girl is so good at multitasking. She has a high level of understanding. Mm-hmm. She's completely dependable, and she goes the extra mile in everything she does. I wish I had an employee like that.
Yeah. I watched her when I was there, like, call one of the drivers for the FedEx, I think it was. And she knew the driver on a first name basis, had a cell phone number, and was able to arrange a pickup to make sure a shipment went out on time. Because she's just that far. Exactly. She's a beast. Yeah.
Right. And so I went and got her. I was like, that's a good. You know where I always want to steal employees from? Chick-fil-A. I'm like, wow, these guys are great. They all enjoy their job. The atmosphere seems happy. I'm just gonna hire 5 of you to come clean reptiles now. You want to stop flipping chicken and start flipping snake poop instead? Let's go do that.
Let's go.
But no, but anyway, you go find someone and you go get it. Just the same way you're like, I'm not trying to find the best deal on a reptile. I want the best reptile. And I'm gonna beg, borrow, steal, whatever I got to do to make that happen. So the whole COVID shutdown thing was my best friend. That's what skyrocketed us up, because all of a sudden everybody I wanted was available to work. And I'm like, what's up? And I did not know if I could handle it or not. I just tried it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to have to really work hard now to pay everybody's paycheck. Because I was only half convinced I could pay my own paycheck if I left work, Yeah, but we have 7 employees now. And that's in the past year. Before that, I had one part-time. That's why I asked. So before that was Aiden, working basically a little bit over minimum wage 1 day a week to just kind of help with the bulk of it on cleaning day. And everything has changed. Aiden doesn't do anything with the cleaning of the snakes or anything like that anymore. He's kind of morphed into a whole other thing. But here's the reality of it. You think that hiring these employees is going to, let's say I hire Rob. Everybody knows Rob. Everybody loves Rob. He cleans and breeds and handles the snake, and he's doing a great job, right? His first year on, he actually produced a couple more clutches with my same collection than I did the previous year, which makes sense because he has his entire work week to focus pretty much just on the animals, whereas I was doing animals, YouTube, this, that, the other, what I mean? 100%. So that focus helps, and that's just him getting up to speed. Right. I mean, that's wait until you see him this next season. It's going to be great.
Oh, I didn't believe it. Yeah.
But here's the reality. I think, okay, Rob's going to take that. And then like you were assuming in your question, I can focus on the things I really need to focus on.
You totally can't.
That's the part that doesn't happen because, like what I end up doing is instead of kind of like me serving everyone, like I still have a ton of customer interfacing because I don't have a sales guy. That's our next big thing. And I know people like to buy from Garrett and stuff like that, but there's also a lot of people that are like, I just want to know what's available for me in my price range. That's the size that I want. And they can have a great experience if I have a great team member to take care of them who knows, the bloodlines on our animals. And there's a lot of people like that. So I already know who I'm going to get for that. But
just let me know when to expect your phone call.
There you go. I tried to get you to do some sales for me before. You kept blowing me off. True story.
Yeah.
Hashtag,
no. Yeah. Hashtag I'm the fucking idiot.
Yeah. So you're fired. You're officially totally fired on your own show.
Officially fired me on my own show right here
You're
in front
fired.
of everybody.
I still expect to see you on July 17th though. But anyways,
I will be there. Yeah, continue on. Sorry.
So, but what I do now instead is like I'm like Rob. I have to support Rob and get him doing everything. So the management of the HR and all the employees and all that kind of stuff, that's like my full-time job now.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard, like, I think you can talk to any one of them. Probably, I would hope they'd be nice enough to speak nicely of me publicly. But if you get them privately, they'll be like, Garrett's such a jag-off, man. Like, oh, gosh, micromanager, wants everything done right all the time. My way's not good enough, and it's something that's totally unimportant or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's every business, every job, and people don't talk about that part. But that's another reason I wanted to bring this up because I spent a week at your place, and even just about a week, was enough time with everyone to where I got to experience little bits of everyone's personality and little moments of like some cracks and creaks and some complaints.
Personality flaws?
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Like I want to clarify, like no complaints in terms of like, God, I fucking hate working for Garrett. Like no, everybody there is so happy. If anything, it's the opposite, where it's just everybody is just having a good time and loves their job and is super happy. But also, there's like, it's hard, like as being a small business where that's the environment you want, but also you're like, hey, I need everybody still to get their shit done.
Well, it's
like,
not.
This is what
I don't have anybody that doesn't get their
no,
shit
not at all.
You know what I mean, like that.
Yeah,
so the problem that we have is that all of us care so damn much.
Yes,
that we spend a lot of time on stupid things.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, how are we going to label the snakes differently? And we're all like, and like, you know what I mean? It really doesn't matter. But like me, Rob, and Jess will revisit an argument for 2 hours a day, once a week for 6 months before we
over the perfect way to do this.
Yes,
over the absolute
and it's
perfect
so
way.
Annoying, and really probably anyone's idea would have been fine to start with.
Yeah.
So, but we all care like too much, and that's the thing that's hard for me because, I mean, we are very very specific in what we do. Our niche of the reptile industry is different than, like as far as like tracking bloodlines. A lot of people are like, well, you need to know, is it 100% het albino? If you can understand the difference between 66% pos het albino, 50% pos het albino, or like was its parent 50% pos albino, so there's a chance of the albino gene being in there, but there's no real number for it. But we go so far beyond that. We're like, okay, this animal is 4th gen produced from one of the original imported of that morph, and it was bred. I was just having a conversation with a guy today where I'm like, okay, so that original male was bred in the 1st generation to a Kalatoa Island female from this bloodline. They took a male from that. In the 2nd generation, we bred it to a Madu female from this bloodline. And then in the 3rd generation, they took it and they bred it to a wild-caught Coyote to really infuse the red in there since the size had already been shrunken down. And so that means it's 87.5% Super Dwarf total. You know what I mean? But it's 12.5 Kalatoa, 25% Madu, 50% Coyote. And it's also 50% pos het anery because it turns out that Madu line had anery in it, which we found out later on this other breeding. And it's just like, it's crazy, So I don't know, all that kind of attention to detail in the bloodlines is what makes our animals the way we do. And we're probably even overdoing it at this point, whereas other people get really mad when I kind of say like basic things like, oh, I don't know, I'll put out a video that's like, you really shouldn't call something a Super Dwarf cross unless it's 50% Super Dwarf or higher at a minimum.
Yeah. Well,
your
that was
goal
the
should be
standard, right?
Yeah, well, sure. So ever since I was a kid, you know what I mean? And the reason why the people who brought that in, the few guys that were working with Super Dwarfs are like, you know, if something's great-great-grandparent was a Super Dwarf and everything else in that bloodline is an 18-foot animal, that animal probably shouldn't be called a Super Dwarf anymore, because you're getting people that are getting
false advertising.
It's like me giving you a kitten in a box outside of Walmart. You know what to expect. But if that sucker grew into an African lion, you'd be like, what the hell? You know what I'm saying? It would be bad for you. It'd be bad for the lion.
It's bad for everyone, right? The market thus doesn't support the customer anymore.
And so the people who really care about the animals are really, the goal should be, how small can we make this thing, or how consistent can we produce the size that we want? Because like I've said it before, we breed in 3 dimensions. Most reptile things are like size or like color and pattern if you're into a species that has morphs. You know, we have color and pattern and bloodlines, and a lot of stuff does have bloodlines. You can look at like green tree pythons and stuff like that. But nobody else is really breeding into that 3rd dimension of size. Because I can give you something that's as big as like a larger North American colubrid, all the way up to literally the largest snake on the planet. What size do you want? What is a good size for you? And a lot of people don't know. You know, there's still people buying baby American alligators at reptile shows because they got that much money in their pocket. And you're like,
crazy.
Did you not know that you can't handle an American alligator? Because if you've never had an adult American alligator, you probably should never buy a baby if you've never had to handle an adult. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you thinking? So, and the animals deserve more than that. So anyway, all of that exacting stuff, that's a lot of pressure. It's pressure on me. You know, I get people publicly, they like complain about us. There's other people who are trying to breed, and they're kind of like, well, I did the value proposition, and no, I don't know that maybe it's not a pure slayer or whatever, but like it was sold to me as a slayer, so who cares where it came from? It's still pretty small, and it's a couple years old. That should be good enough.
Cares. Yeah.
Well, I care. I wouldn't want to, like, if you're telling me an animal came off Slayer Island, I want it to have come from there. I don't want it to be yellowish like the snakes that came from that island, or smallish like the snakes that came off that island, right? I mean, you had experience with this. You had animals that were like, you bought as a Super Dwarf, you're all excited, and then later you're like, maybe I'm not so sure. Yeah. So it's like,
and I got very lucky in my scenario, to be clear, like, to still got a small animal. But the thing is I bought an animal with intent on using him for breeding purposes that I now don't particularly want to use for that exact same reason. Because I don't want to perpetuate this cycle of like, well, it's a Super Dwarf, clearly. I mean, he's, you know, he's way small. He's like 3 years old and Super Dwarf, which he is. He's tiny. But that's not what's important. I don't think, like, I think we need to establish these standards, and I love that's
it's different if you own a pet. Like, it could be a great pet, you know.
It could, and that's it, right? Yeah.
And I think yours was, you bought it from a breeder, right? And you're just maybe not, the quality standard you want for your bloodlines is maybe higher than what they had, and you can't build off of that. That's a faulty foundation, right?
Because
so you still did a good thing, and you got a small snake, and if all you want is a pet
from pure wild caught animals, I mean, it's a legitimate. They're both parents are wild caught. Both parents are allegedly from Super Dwarf Islands, but what islands is in question? And that's, again, that's where,
as soon as you say allegedly, so murky. You lost me.
Exactly. Right. That's my
allegedly.
Point. It's so murky. Okay. The entire thing is so murky. No matter how small he is, I'm like, that's great. He's an amazing pet, and I will love him forever. He is an amazing pet, and he's just that. I'm not going to breed him because I have no idea what his offspring are going to look like. I have nothing to go on.
And, you know, not everybody does have to breed either, and that's a different thing. But
that's a whole another conversation.
But it's just like the alligator. Like, I think if you want an American alligator, there's so many in rescues. Get your stuff. I don't have anything against people having American alligators, but I think that'd be great. I'd love to have, like, dude, I'd have like 2.3 of every species of crocodile in the world if I could. But the point is this, like, you want an alligator, go build an enclosure for an adult alligator and rescue one or 50, that other people had babies and couldn't take care of them. Now you've got a great pet, but if you want to be a breeder, it's probably a pretty stupid idea to buy a bunch of alligators having never understood the adults or what they're like and all this stuff, and thinking you're going to breed and seed into a market that, like, there's never going to be a high dollar market for American alligators because not that many people can keep them.
It's like venomous. It's a similar kind of thing. Yeah, 100%.
There's some, like, always like the niche specialty, like venomous is
the rare stuff, sure.
Yeah, but like, you're going to compete at that level. So if you want to do crocodilian stuff, like, I think you could probably make a ton of money breeding some species, but you got to do your research. Is this one, like a West African dwarf crocodile would be a great one to breed. Lots of people could have it. Problem is you can't sell them across state lines. So you have the regulations there. You have all this other stuff. There's a bunch of different restrictions. Learn the market, figure it out. Yeah, learn the market that you're getting into. Right.
Indigo snakes are crazy. I mean, prices are crazy on them. They're super high in demand, but they're also highly regulated in terms of the process that's required, to sell them, to transport them, the whole nine. But there's a lot of people that have, 2 or 3 pairs that are making I won't say a lot of people. There's a handful of people that have some pairs that are making crazy money off of them, which is crazy to think about. It goes back to what you were saying about, there are these niches where you can put yourself and you can make a tremendous amount of money as a hobbyist and still enjoy the hobby, make enough money to turn around and reinvest and share us with USARC and support everyone that we're doing and keep the cash flow going.
Well, it comes right back around to Grandpa, right? You have to see where your roadblocks are going to be. That's my sales guy that doesn't want to let a 16-year-old kid drive a car because his manager said, we have to be 18 to test drive. He didn't really consider the situation where the kid with the briefcase full of cash shows up and all of a sudden the manager's sniffing around like, I want some of that. Go ahead, drive what you want. I'll go with you. You know what I mean? Whatever.
And the sales guy looks like a jerk.
He was a jerk. But realize your your roadblocks and figure out how you can get around them. So, I mean, if you want to be successful breeding alligators, there are people who breed alligators for success. And then you have to ask yourself if you really want to do that, like, I don't know, if I was going to breed alligators, I'd probably have to kill a lot of them, right? For skin and meat and stuff like that if I want to be profitable. So when I was a little kid, did I be like, you know what? I love alligators. When I grow up, I want to kill more of them than anyone before me. That doesn't make a lot of sense. You know what I'm saying? So
I heard you giving a really great lesson to a young up-and-coming breeder that I won't mention at the show that, when we were there at Arlington. And there was a similar story, in terms of like mainland retics and just a lot of things that are going on. And I think ball pythons might eventually reach kind of a similar thing where that's an actual conversation that may actually come up. Of like,
I'm not following you. I'm not sure other people. What do you mean, retics and ball pythons? What are you talking about?
Sorry. There was a conversation, or just there's this theory out there in the market that, like, for example, mainland retics.
Sure.
They're great because they produce a ton of eggs, a ton of babies, and so your odds in terms of producing these world first animals are pretty high, right? Yeah. The issue is, and
you get a 1 in 64 chance, but you can probably get that in a clutch because of 70 eggs.
Totally pull it off. But here's the issue: is you got 69 other eggs. If you got 70 and you only got one of what you actually wanted, so what do you do with the other 69? You know, and then you multiply that by how many people are breeding mainland retics, and so now all of a sudden it's like, you got an interesting market that's going on with these snakes that are going to get 18 to 20 foot or whatever. And so so there's a conversation that may have to happen of as far as like, hey, are we producing these things faster than we can sell them, and are we producing them at a capacity that's like way higher than what the market can absorb and take care of properly? Probably.
I have an unpopular opinion about that. You want to hear it?
I think I do too. And
here's my unpopular opinion. There's a lot I've heard. So like retics in particular. And I might be playing the devil's advocate a little bit here because I may have been doing the grandpa thing, like, listen here, kid, like this that you like to do, that's great, but that's dumb and it's not going to make you money. Invest your time and money over here. Sure. So it might have been something like that. But you're talking about overproducing animals, right? So like if you love ball pythons, how many pictures, Google cobra eating ball python and see how
Yep.
many images come up. Like tons of them do, right? And
Tons.
the snakes that those guys are eating, either they died of disease, right? Very few of natural causes, because those suckers live longer than anybody that, you know, has really had. I mean, people with ball pythons, people have 60-year-old ball pythons. The market's not that old, right? So it's not natural causes. It's either disease or they overproduced and they froze a bunch of babies. They culled them, and they did that. With retics, I hear a lot, because I'm friends with a lot of guys that are retic breeders, obviously. But even though the super dwarf market is quite different than the mainland market, and I have totally different clientele and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
They're a very different kind of animal, right? It's like I said, it's like a Bengal cat versus having an African lion. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
But a lot of the retic guys complain about 2 or 3 big producing breeders, and they say that the retics are overproduced. And when they say that, it's based on the fact that they're seeing a lot of babies hatched, and we all kind of have our own perspective on life, right?
Sure.
So I think people who are, if you are the kind of person, and maybe just listen to this a little bit, like, I'll tell you the moral of the story first. The moral of the story first is, shut up on social media. You don't know what you're talking about, okay? Don't go out there and tell other people what they should and shouldn't be doing, because you're not them. You don't know their life. You can inspire people to be better, but if you start saying you should not do this, it's like, well, that's fine, but define truth for me first. Let's have that conversation. What's the ultimate truth? Yeah. Right. Who's God? Who's God? Tell me who's God. What makes right and wrong? And if you can tell me that, then you can spout your stupid opinion on social media. But until we get that deep in a relationship with each other that we know that, lay off. Right. That's the moral of the story. That may be a little bit jaded, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
The people who are saying the stuff is being overproduced, they're looking from their perspective, and they're seeing somebody on let's say YouTube or whatever hatch. They're like, we got 5 clutches hatching, 250 snakes, egg cutting, go, boom, 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 boom. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, I bred retics. I got a 25 egg clutch, and it took me 2 years to sell them all. So that guy's obviously overproducing because the market is completely saturated, where I couldn't even sell 25. What the heck do you think he's doing breeding 250? That's 10 times the amount in an already saturated market. Here's what the person that's the hobbyist, the small time breeder, doesn't understand. Your market is not their market.
Right.
And that I could be breeding and selling exactly the same animals as this guy over here to my right, but his market is not necessarily my market, because we have different ways of outreach. We have different circles of influence. We may have some crossover customers, and within that crossover, there might be saturation. But what they don't realize is, like, I mean, so, you know, like, I used to work at Prehistoric Pets. We were just talking about, I almost had my bachelor party before I worked there. Yeah. I sold retics. It was not uncommon for me to put a box together. I'd build a custom wooden crate, each with like individually temperature controlled boxes, and I would put 1,000 retics in there, and I'd ship them to a country overseas to supply a market where nobody was breeding.
Right.
So if you're
tremendous demand,
yeah, if you're like Joe Schmo in, you know, small town America or whatever, and you can't sell your 25 retics, and not, like, I was not Prehistoric Pets, obviously that's Jay Brewer, that's his whole thing, and whether or not he overproduces retics is actually not what I'm talking about. Totally. But my deal is, Joe Schmo small town America can't really talk to Jay Brewer about whether or not he's overproducing retics, because Joe Schmo didn't sell 25. If Jay Brewer did, and Joe Schmo and he made let's say he made 80 clutches of retics and they all sold, then he did not overproduce. But Joe Schmo, who made 25, did overproduce, and he's the guy who's complaining.
Yeah,
it's simple. And Jay Brewer probably knows better. He knows better not to complain about you and your life, and he's a live and let live kind of guy. You know what I mean? So if you're the, like, for those of you who are complaining on the internet or about other people, even if you're thinking it in your own head, I would encourage you to do a hard stop and just do a temperature test on yourself. Are you assuming that they have your problems, they have your areas of influence, and they have your situation, and the decisions they're making wouldn't work for your life, and that's why you think they're bad? Because if that's what you're assuming, you're wrong. Your life, I don't know who you're talking about, but I can guarantee you you're not them.
Yeah.
They have a different set of circumstances. So each person needs to figure out for themselves whether or not they will overproduce. It's not a hard question to ask, Zach. Like, so if you're going to produce snakes and you make a clutch of what, 30 snakes, right?
Yeah,
From your Slayer Tiger het ghost.
Yeah.
You make 30. Do you know 30 people looking for the snakes that those will hatch? Because if you can't even get close, because there might some come along that you didn't know of before, but not all of them. They're not all going to appear out of the woodwork. If you don't know anybody looking for snakes like that, when you breed those snakes one time, you already overproduced.
Yes.
And if your goal was, well, I want to pick...
Because of my position,
Yeah, I want to pick... Well, I don't know if you do or not. I'm just saying that's the question you need to ask yourself. That's the question we all need to ask ourselves.
Oh, I've already have, yeah.
Yeah, because most people breed with this perspective. They're like, you know what I want? I just want like 1.2 for myself. I'm going to keep a male and 2 females, and I want these morphs, and I got a 1 in 8 chance of producing them, so I should get 3, and if I can keep those, I'll sell the rest.
Yeah.
But
they don't think how.
You didn't consider, those are your babies. Those are your babies.
You made them. You're
responsible for these cute little animal lives. And if all you were thinking about is the skin deep value of the 3 highest, and you know that you have a home for them, and you know you should be able to produce 3 to 4, and you'd be happy to keep 3 to 4, so you produce 50, you just you just bastardized the other 45 babies. You're creating bastards in your life, and that's your legacy. That's 45 times more your legacy than the one you held back.
And keeping in mind how long they're going to live. And so
what you want?
So you're right. So we've reached the root of the problem, I think, right? Is those people. It's not the people that are producing 1,000 or whatever babies, right? It's the people that produce even one baby of any kind, we're talking about reptiles, but of any kind that have no plan for how they're going to actually I'm gonna produce this clutch. Like, they have no plan, and they did no work and no preparation to make sure that when they're here, I have an avenue to make sure that these move on to good homes.
Right. And let's be clear, it certainly can be the person who made 1,000. They could be a huge problem.
Sure, it can be both.
But
it can be both.
But
absolutely,
they're their own deal. That's their problem. Your problem is, here's the thing. Most people get so excited to learn kind of the fun technical side of reptiles. Like, I know how to do husbandry. I think I figured out how to breed them. I did a lot of research. I studied tons of Punnett squares. You know what I mean?
Calculator cowboys. You're talking about
and I did all the I looked up the babies and how much they'll cost online, and I did a bunch of genetics calculators to figure out my ratios. I even calculated the estimated value of my clutch. But you never did anything to grow the market that you're going to feed, because you want that market ready. Just like we were talking about Calatoas a minute ago, and how I could sell the Reach Dreams Calatoas, probably within 24 hours. It's because I have a list of names that is much, much longer than my number of babies. Already in line, cash in hand, ready to buy them before they hatched. And that's what's different. So here's one thing. People don't understand. They get a little bit mad with our system of the way we sell things. But I do it for this exact reason we're talking about. Go online and find Reach Out Reptiles availability list.
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Not on Morph Market, not on any forums, King Snake Fauna, not on our website. Not anywhere. We don't have a list. And people that don't know from the outside, they're like, well, why would you not post your animals and all their prices? I think it's because you're trying to overcharge me. You're probably going to find out that I have $1,000, so you'll take my 1,000, and the next guy has 800, so you'll take his 800 and sell us the same animal. But that's not it at all. We don't do that. I know the value.
I can attest to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just told you, like, Calitos are $4,500 a pair. We know the values of our animals. We put values on those, and those are the values that we sell them for.
Yep.
But no, the reason we do that is because when you call, I want to hear what it is that you really want, and I want to grandpa your ass for a minute and see if what you're doing is stupid, because you're allowed to be as stupid as you want, but you have to do it over there. The way I'm concerned is you're not allowed to be stupid with my babies ever. And some people are going to do that anyways, but we try very hard to make sure that I'm not trying to deny anybody the sales. I'm not trying to be the guy that's like, hey, you 16-year-old kid, you can't have this. You're not good enough. No, that's not it. But let's be honest with ourselves. Some people aren't good enough. And it's not them. It's not their value as a person. They're just not in the right place to own that animal right now. Right. You know, so if you don't have a 7,000-gallon pond and a half an acre, you're not good enough to own that baby American alligator just because you can afford it and a 40-gallon aquarium. Right. You're not good enough. I truly believe you could go become good enough, but I think you should prove it to yourself. And if you're buying one of my babies, then you should definitely prove it to me before you get one. Yeah. And that's why we don't do that, because I have animals that are, I mean, we don't have any of the true giants. You know, mainland retics can get between 100 and 200 pounds pretty easily. Our biggest snakes, our biggest ones are like 40 pounds. So they're dramatically smaller.
Slayers.
And our smallest ones are like 3 pounds. Yeah. No, they're not slayers.
I was going to say, you have like some mainland crosses, Yeah,
our slayers are not actually that big. I think our biggest slayer is like that female that you were holding.
I love that girl.
She's probably 20, 25 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, and she's still like honestly handleable like by one person. Like as long as you're careful and you know what the fuck you're doing. I mean, you should probably.
But if I took her and I bred her to a 200-pound mainland, the babies are going to be a lot bigger than her. But they're still technically considered dwarf by definition, because they're 50% slayer.
And that's the conversation.
Yeah, so I don't want to put a list out that says dwarf this, when some of my dwarfs, I have animals labeled as, let's go dwarf for a second, not super dwarf.
Please,
dwarf
please,
can mean a lot of things. Dwarf can mean 37.5% Calatoa and 37.5% Jampea. And if they came from a 75% super dwarf female whose mom was also a pure super dwarf, that animal that's labeled a dwarf, the males are going to get like 7 feet.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that I have tons of customers that are like, dude, I bought your dwarf and it's like smaller than my super dwarf from the other guy. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, it's all about the bloodlines. It wasn't, you know, if you don't understand how it works, don't try to do the math by yourself. You shouldn't be trying to learn things, whether it's on my YouTube channel with Reach Out Reptiles or articles online or whatever. There's not a lot out there, but you shouldn't be trying to learn that on your own and then navigate these treacherous waters of don't get ripped off, don't be wrong, or you'll end up with an African lion when you're shopping for a house cat. No, you need a good breeder in that scenario. When you're a beginner, you need a good breeder to coach you and guide you and protect you from yourself, you know, from your own ignorance. And I don't mean it ignorance in the way like you're an ignorant person. Like, you know, I mean ignorance as in you can't possibly know what you don't know. I don't know anything of any of the things that I don't know. I don't know those things. I'm 100% ignorant on 100% of the things that I don't know. So I need somebody to teach me. People get excited about. Yeah, I need somebody.
People get excited, and they reach out and they say, "Oh, I can totally handle a 9-foot, a 10-foot snake," because they have this idea in their mind of what that means. Right. Or just whatever, you know, we get ahead of ourselves and what we think we can deal with, and I've always loved that about your sales process, and I love that this came up. Just that your process voids the window shoppers for the most part. No process is ever perfect, but your process at least requires a moderate understanding from the get-go, right? And it's funny to me because. I hope this isn't. I think this is okay to talk about. I do. There's been a couple.
Talk about
people,
whatever you want. I'm a
I know. Yeah. Well, and it does. It makes a good point. There's a couple people that I've spoken to. They're like, oh, I've tried to buy snakes from Garrett, and it's so hard to get communication. Blah blah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, it's really not though. Like, I know your process. I know who works for you, and I'm like, all of these people are constantly available. So my immediate thought most often is like, well, if there's a reason that you haven't been able to like consistently get a hold of them, it's like it's probably something that you're doing wrong. It's probably generally, and that's again, I know you and you're a friend, so I'm like maybe that's a bias thing. But anyways, these couple of people where those stories came out later on ultimately like showed their true colors, where they ended up like one person was like, oh yeah, I ended up just buying a mainland male, and I'm just gonna feed him appropriately and make sure that he stays small. And I wanted to like yell at this problem, like, no, like everything you just said is wrong.
Well, that's a really common misconception, but
yeah,
I see that as the same as like, well, if the guy who's peddling baby American alligators at a carnival in the 70s tells you that it's not going to get any bigger than the tank you put it in or something. The idea is this is like, well, why would you pay for the genetics of a super dwarf if the genetics didn't matter and you can manipulate the animal by food? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I have a 3-year-old son. He probably weighs, I don't know what he weighs, 35 pounds. And I can guarantee you that if I feed him little enough, he'll never grow bigger than 35 pounds.
Right.
That's a fact. I can do that scientifically. It will probably reduce his lifespan. But he'll never get bigger than he is now. But you can't take a mainland that as a yearling is the size of an adult breeder of these different super dwarfs or whatever and keep it baby size forever. That's not a responsible thing to do. The thing we should be doing instead of saying like, how can I manipulate an animal to be more convenient to me, is that's not it. That's saying, what are my capabilities as a keeper?
Yes.
And what animal fits that? And so what I should be doing with any animal, and snakes, certainly fall within this, is what's the best way I can provide like prime nutrition? What's the best diet for that animal to be as vibrant and healthy and wonderful as possible? And forget about size, because we're not trying to manipulate anything here. We just want excellent husbandry when it comes to nutrition. And if you provide that and you allow the animal to get as big as you want, now you're doing it right. And if you can't handle what that animal will become, you shouldn't have had that animal.
Yeah.
And the guy that sold it to you, they might have done it just because they didn't know any other way. But our sales process, you do have to have a conversation with us. And no, I'm not going to just give you like a big list of everything we have and let you pick off of it before I know who you are. Because I don't want you to, like, I love my big babies and my little babies. And I don't want you to end up with a big baby. Because here's the thing. Someone is asking me about albinos today, right?
Yeah.
And they wanted a lavender albino. And they're asking for a super dwarf. And they wanted a very small one. It was actually a very high percentage because they're trying to match it to kind of like a really low % male that they have now. And they
I was going to say, they already have an existing animal. Yep.
Right. And I was saying, that's going to be really hard for you to do. In theory, you can do it. Their male's 37.5% super dwarf. I said, so you're going to need something that is now, help me with the math. What's the difference to 100?
Oh, Lord. Over 70.
62 points.
62. Over 70 is what I think their average is, what they're going to be able to buy, is what's going to be available, is like a 75%.
Yeah,
that's
so you need at least a
62.5%
super dwarf to make super dwarf babies, which would be 50%. Because for those of you guys that don't know, you average those together. Now, the thing about the albino super dwarf market is that there are very few super dwarfs available over 50%, and when they do, most of the ones that are listed as that are misrepresented.
Yep.
The only guy that's producing like a lot of them consistently is like Eric Lee, Richard Bilbo, those guys. Yep. But they're really the two, and they actually have sibling animals to each other. They're all the same bloodline. They got them from the same clutch. So that's how rare they are.
Yeah.
But I was telling him, like, you can get a lavender albino to breed to this male, and you'll make stuff, but that animal is going to cost like $3,000. I said, now if you get a straight across animal to produce a bloodline equivalent to what you have, like he wanted a lavender het snow, 62.5% super dwarf. I'm going to have them later this season, but a female's going to be like $3,000.
Yeah.
For those of you who are listening, they're going to go, I wonder which animal I should chase down and grab. Those are them. They're white diamond bloodline albinos. They're going to be phenomenal. Super high percentage, right?
The white diamond stuff is great. Yeah.
Right. So those are, but I was like, I don't think you should spend. His male was like 400 bucks.
And that's
it doesn't make logical sense to me. I'm gonna grandpa you for a second and be like, it doesn't really make sense to have a $400 male and have to spend $3,000 on a female to make an acceptable baby. I said, I think you might, if you really want to breed that male, you might have to realize that male is at the level of breeding like dwarf/super dwarf crosses. And if that's the case, I have some females that are probably going to get like 11 to 13 feet. They're lavender het snows and they're $950.
Yeah.
That's the female that would be a good match for that male. But if you're like, oh gosh, 13 feet, that's too big, then I applaud you for realizing that. Good job. Let's figure out a different project. And the guy ended up buying a 50% super dwarf female that's going to be in the 9 to 11 foot range, which was more comfortable for him. 9 to 11 doesn't sound that big from 11 to 13, but it's actually about half the size.
It's the body weight is different. Yeah,
because every foot you add is like boom, 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 like bigger and bigger. So that's a much more manageable size. He found a female for $1,200, not an albino, but he chose to prioritize the smaller bloodline over the morph that he wanted, and I think that's a very responsible decision, and he's going to end up having quite desirable babies because of it, and probably a happier experience as a keeper.
Well, and that's what I was going to say.
And I'm happy to send one of those babies to him. I know that he's going to take really good care of it, and I appreciate the conversation with him today, to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah,
so
that's what I love about your sales process.
Yeah, I mean, you can even call it a sales process. I just call it like geeking out with people over snakes.
And that's what I was going to say.
That's why we're living the dream. It's because I get to have these conversations where I'm like living vicariously through these people. So I'm like, okay, I'm listening to you. I hear your problem. I can hear what you want, like your goal. I've identified your goal. And we've talked about your comfort level with different sizes of these animals. Let me find you something. This is cool. Yeah. I'm going to go shopping through my own snake racks. And I get to do that many times every day. And it's so exciting. You know what I mean? And it's like,
I can totally
I don't care if it is a 370, you can get a super dwarf male that's going to get 7 feet for $375. It's a $375. And I'm like, are you serious? You've never owned a super dwarf? Oh my God, you got to have one of these. I can't wait to get you this $375 male. In fact, if you send me the money on friends and family, I'll give you free shipping. We'll save you another like $50-$100. You know what I mean? Right. So let's do that. The other thing is like, if somebody, like we sold a snake for $40,000 earlier this year. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, dude, I can't believe you bought this snake. That's so freaking baller. If I hadn't bred it myself, I don't know that I would ever buy that snake because that's so crazy. You're the freaking man who just drops 40 G's on a snake. That's insane. And I was able to celebrate with that customer the same as I was with the $375 customer who's getting his first snake. And it's just like, I love my job. I love my job. No, and it's not even a job. It's just this thing that I made up that gives me a briefcase of money that's equal to a job that I used to have. So it's like
it's this thing that you do.
The truth is like, I'm working 80 hours a week or whatever, but I retired years ago. And I'm just having fun now. You know what I mean? I stacked up a bunch of briefcases and I'm good for a long time. So the pressure is off. I can have a good time. And I would encourage you, the rest of you guys, to don't do the thing that you love the most. Do the one that makes sense that you also love. And stack up your briefcase for yourself. Take all the pressure off and have a good time. Period.
Garrett, you nailed that shit, man. And this is why I was so excited for this interview. I love you as a person because I love that you have a stance on almost everything, it seems.
And yes, I'm very opinionated.
No. And that's what I was going to say. For some people, that might sound weird. I appreciate it because I think I'm a little bit the same way where like generally anything that's brought up, I have an opinion on it and I can weigh in on it and I can say, hey, this is how I feel and this is why, or this is how I do things and this is why. You always have a why.
Well, so here's the best part. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that you and I are the type of people who are introspective and we sit around and we think about too much stuff.
All the time, yeah.
All right, let me think about what my opinion is on living on Mars. Is that relevant to me? Am I ever going to do that? No.
It's not, but I got to think about it.
But this is where I feel about it. And if I was going to live on Mars, these are the 3 parameters I know that are my non-negotiables to get there. So
perfect.
We think too much. right? Other people
Mm-hmm.
don't think enough. And so the cool thing about this hobby and this industry, those other people that don't think enough, they might not make wise decisions maybe when they're purchasing an animal of a species that they're not interested in getting into, but they do a lot of other cool things. And they can, once they have that animal, if they do get the right animal, if they don't, it's traumatic for everyone. But if they do, they can now take that and take their area of personal gifting and share their passion with the world.
Yeah.
So I love to be the connecting point of that. And I like to work together where it's like, I love your passion. I love your vision. I like your goals. You have a terrible lack of planning. But don't worry. I sat up all night last night thinking about exactly what somebody like you would need. And here you are calling me. So we can work together with each other to grow that stuff stronger. Instead of tearing each other down on social media and stuff, realize that other people are different from you, and that's beautiful. And oh my God, you only have to be good at what you're good at if you know how to use relationships with other people, you know, in a mutually beneficial way to where what they're good at can benefit you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I absolutely know what you're saying.
I'm really bad at making people feel good about myself.
I have this look on my face because I know.
Yeah, my mom is upstairs, and she gives great hugs. I'm not the greatest hug. I'm like, hey, awkward white guy hug. Hey, 3 taps. I'm not gay. You know what I mean? But my mom, you can just like bury yourself in my mom's arms and give her a great hug. And I don't have to be a good hugger to benefit from her ability to do that. I can just be like, Mom, and give her a big old hug. And like, I'm sorry for the way I was when I was a kid, when I was breeding rattlesnakes under my bed and not telling you, because I knew you would say no. Thank you for still loving me anyway. And I can benefit from all the things that she's good at. And then last night we stayed up late and we were having a conversation about a business endeavor that she's trying to undertake. And I said, well, you have 2 options. You can do this one where you'll make X amount of money this year. And I pulled a calculator and I was like, this is the thing you're telling me you want to do. And I kind of grandpa'd my own mom. That's a really weird statement to make.
Hey, things come full circle. It's fine.
I grandpa'd my mom, and I said, let's do the calculations on the way you're telling me you want to do it because you're passionate and want to have fun. It's going to take you 88 years to do it, to make the same amount of money as you could do by the end of the year this year. And I told her, I was like, Mom, I love you. I don't think you have 88 years left. You should probably go with option 1. Yeah. And she'd never really thought about it before. So we don't have to be all things to all people. We can just be ourselves if and only if we allow other people to be themselves, we recognize their value as a human being, and we work together with each other to get towards a common goal. You know, and it's like I reap the benefits of all the people who are super good at things that I'm not, you know. And it's like you could do it like if I don't have time, but if someone else has more time, I can reap the benefits of that. You know what I mean? I don't have money, but if someone else has money, I can reap the benefits of that. I don't know how to whatever. You know, it just doesn't even matter. Like
someone else can fill that gap if you can build that relationship and communicate.
Constantly. And the thing is, like, first of all, you got to be vulnerable and authentic enough with yourself to realize you're not perfect. And then you have to be willing to ask for help. And then you will have so much fun if you do those things. If you're like I love throwing stuff like this out on social media. Like, hey guys, it looks like I'm going to be planning a trip to Timbuktu, you know, next weekend. And I've never been to Timbuktu. Anybody out here ever been there or know anyone that has any recommendations? Because I really want my Timbuktu experience to be amazing. And you'll get all kinds of comments back. And people are so happy to help you because they want to share their Timbuktu experience and knowledge with you because you're an idiot and you obviously need help. And if you're like, hey, just an idiot here, don't know anything about Timbuktu, but I want to be there, you know.
And they give you that information that's like, I wish that somebody would have told me this before I went.
Yep. So it's just a great way to live.
That's
and
you with the way that you sell your snakes.
Yeah, and a lot of people talk about like being more efficient with their time or this or that. How are you going to be successful as business? Grind. You know, a lot of it is just that. Just ask for help. And you can get so much more done when you build a community of people around you by building up everybody you can. Like every interaction I have, every place, whether I'm on this podcast or someone else, I don't know whose ears this message is going to fall on, but I hope that they leave a little bit better or a little bit more challenged or a little bit more curious or a little bit more inspired than they were before they heard it. And if I did, then boom, done. I built you up, and that's great. And someday, if it's like, oh, here I am, I'm on the verge of failure because of these terrible circumstances that I wasn't able to avoid, and I don't know what to do, I'll bet you that person will remember being built up by hearing that message one day and rally together with everybody else to support me in my time of need. So it's like wherever we have our strengths, we need to share with people. And wherever we see weaknesses, we need to be generous with others. We don't need to be like hammering them down where they suck. They probably already know they suck at that. Don't tell them that. They don't need to know that. They've been battling with that every day since they were little. You know what I mean? And tell them like, hey, I can see you're struggling with this. I'm really good at that. Let me give you some tips, pointers. Here's advice. Let me help you with that.
And have a mutual exchange.
Yeah. That's it. Well, it doesn't even need to be a mutual exchange. I was
going to say it doesn't have to be
me
mutual.
Personally,
just an exchange.
It's very rewarding for me just to help build other people up, even if I don't get anything in return, because I just like it. It gives me there's an intrinsic value and a repercussion to my life, to be that way with people. So I just try to be that way as I go around, and I try to teach people how to be different.
Yeah, I think you're wired that way, man. A little bit. I think you see a lot of opportunity in people, and you extend that olive branch and you try to push people to a limit that maybe they don't see for themselves. I've witnessed it myself.
I think people that are that way, I've always felt interesting little side rabbit trail. To say you're wired that way, or like, my wife always tells me, it drives me crazy. Well, you're just Garrett Hartle. And we can't all do that kind of stuff. And it's like, to me, that's a cop-out, because it's not automatic. It took my grandpa investing in me when I was a kid. It took a lot of experience. I've certainly had my fill of failures and terrible times and losses and tragedies. And a lot of that stuff brings the breadth of character or perception that I have. Anything that I do have is from a lot of the terrible things I've been through in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not like, oh, you were born this way and your life is easy now. I don't think that's the case.
It totally makes sense.
I think somebody could be wired however they are. Their life could be, you could be 50 years old and listening to this message, you always lived every 50 of those years one way, and say, you know what? I'll wake up different tomorrow and just try something. I'm not going to be probably very good at it because I haven't done it in 50 years, but it's like working out a new muscle that you haven't before. It's going to be painful and weird and hard in the beginning, but if you push through, you can make that part of yourself healthy,
and strong.
But it has to be, and it has to be intentional. So, I think anybody can do that. They just have to, you don't have to be a total introspective person like you and me, staying up all night and figuring out everyone's issues and every possible variation of what might or might not happen in life. But you have to be intentional enough to kind of say, like, well, what are those hard stops in life? Those things that are going to, those barricades that are going to try to block me. Mm-hmm. And who's on the other side of it, and how do I reach them beyond this,
so that I can or go around
and get to where I want to be? How can I intentionally do that? And so that might be the lesson that my grandfather taught me in the beginning, is just not to take that for an answer, to know what you want and think outside the box and figure out, like I said, if you want that right snake, beg, borrow, steal, whatever you got to do, you know what I mean? You go get that snake, and, and you make it happen. And when you do that and you don't think, well, what's the right thing? And I didn't overthink this enough, and maybe I should make a decision and just think about this for 3 more years or whatever. I think you know what you really want. I think it's more important for you to go get it and try something. And even if you fail, allow yourself that. You know what I mean? Maybe I go buy a bunch of Amazon basins because
what's the alternative?
Super strong, and I'm like, oh crap, these things easily die, and I killed them all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
but what's the alternative?
Go back
you
to
never did
pythons.
You never did it, and then you end up 80 years old, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have tried to breed those animals because I really love them, and I never did, and I wish I would have done it.
Yeah, at least
and that's just one example,
and a little bit of breadth of character.
Yeah. So. No, absolutely, Garrett. And again, I think we're gonna wrap it up here because I love everything you just said. I think my face said it all. There's nothing for me to even chime in on. I mean, there's comments that I would love to make, but it was all basically just in support of the things you were saying. Man, thank you. And
thank you. I appreciate you coming on. When we were hanging out down in Arlington and stuff, I was making fun of you so much with everybody else that I barely got the time to sit down and have a good conversation with you. So
I know, man, it was super busy, but again, I'll be there for your big move. For those who don't know, my God, can we announce it here? I hope publicly, like what you have going on.
I suppose I haven't announced it publicly anywhere else, but you're on our Patreon supporters, so go for it.
Yeah, well, all right. So Garrett, finally, after all these years. My biggest observation the first time that I showed up at Garrett's place was I was like, I told him, I think, Garrett, I told you word for word, I was like, it's amazing to me that this is the location where some of the world's most amazing dwarf and super dwarfs come from, some of the world's first, etc. is straight out of this small little basement. And you finally...
When I lean back too hard, I'll bump my head on this wall
here. Because it looks small on camera, and then you get there and you realize it is super small. Which is even more of a compliment, again, to just what you've done. But again, I'm excited to be live, announcing for the first time live that, you have a facility coming up, man, a full-sized, big Reach Out Reptiles facility. That's a big step up for you, and I know it's a big move, and it's been a long time coming, I think, for sure, and I'm very excited to see how you build it out.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, so we bought a 3-story commercial building, so... We're going to use just the bottom story for now and get in there and try to do the smart thing and probably rent the upstairs out to cover the mortgage, make sure we do this in a financially responsible way, get that mortgage paid down until we own it, and then we can do whatever we want with it because we'll have a briefcase full of cash there. So yeah, no, the big thing is we're going to be able to give our animals so much more room. They've given me so much life. I just want to be able to give that back. So this facility is going to be, it's going to be huge. It's going to be crazy. We close at the end of June. So, we're already under contract. We're buying it and all that kind of stuff. It's great. So I got to get a ton of things done between now and June. And then that's why, for those of you that were confused by my I hope you're coming July 17th thing, you know what I mean? That's a private invitation to our Patreon supporters to come out and kind of help us move and see the place. So you can see the old place and the new place and be that little historical moment in our personal, company journey. And it'll be really good. So between having the dream team and now finally the space that we need, because I just said we have 7 employees that all work out of my basement. You know what I mean?
It's a lot. Everybody's on top of each other for sure.
Yeah, it's the American dream though, to be able to.
No, it absolutely
you think like, I don't think Superdors are the next Apple computer, but all those great companies just started out just like that, and
in the garage.
And we have we know what we're about. We know what we're trying to do, and we're really trying to reconnect people that can't get out, like in the way that we want to in these exotic places with that the wonder of that wild world. You know what I mean? And just kind of reignite that in people through these cool little miniaturized apex predators. And just So I don't know. It's been fun, and we do everything a little bit differently, but. I think it works because people can see the passion and the genuine love that we have for the animals, and our customers are like our family, Reach Out Reptiles family.
Well, and it's built that way from the start to finish. Again, I think the process that you guys have in place is literally built that way. That's why I laugh again on the very rare occasions, happened once or twice, where people have reached out and they've had like, oh, well, I can't get a hold of someone or blah blah, and I'm like, because you're not committed enough. I'm literally talking to somebody who I already know that you're gonna buying a mainland or whatever, because like you didn't even want to answer simple questions about like what was your expectation for the size of your animal, what's the plan for your project, like what you guys really want to place these amazing animals that you produce, because you produce still not nearly enough to even meet the demand. Not even close. So you have the ability to make sure these animals go to amazing homes, and I love that part. I love that it's.
I don't want to do it any other way. So we spend a lot more time building the market than we do breeding the snakes.
And that's
and most of those people are the kind of people that I just want to see availability lists. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want you to know who I am.
Yeah.
And I let those customers go. You have to be kind of okay with that. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing against them or whatever. It's just, and this is maybe
No,
a
it's not a personal
generality,
thing.
but it's kind of like, well, if you don't want me to know anything about you, it would be kind of like somebody, like we really do love the snakes. They are our babies. So it's kind of like you coming to me and you say, hey, I want to marry your daughter. And I'm like, well, what's your name? I'm like, well, I'm not telling you that. Well, where do you live? What do you do? Who are you? Like, well, you can't know. I don't want to know that. Why are you being so difficult? And I'm like, because you want to marry my daughter. You know what I mean?
I absolutely know what you mean, and it's that pride that you stand on. It's everything. I can't simply put it into a closing wrap up as much as I can gab. I wish that I could simply wrap up, the way that you do things and why I love it so much. But that's why I would encourage anyone that's listening to this that's considered it and have not pulled the trigger to be a customer of Garrett's. Again, I was a customer of Garrett's long before I was ever what I consider to be a friend. I hope he feels the same way, but I'm saying it. I'm your friend. I love Garrett to death. I really do. I love his process. I love his thoughts on business, and he's a great guy to have in your corner. And the thing is again, what I've said about Blake Stewart is the same thing. And I think that's why I like both of you guys, and I think that's why you guys both get along. When you invest with certain people, you don't just get what they're selling. You get a lot more. And that's how I feel about the process with Garrett and with Reach Out Reptiles, is that you're getting a lot more. You're getting a true commitment to what you're trying to build on. Whether that's just a pet or something you're trying to raise to breed and make some money.
I appreciate all your brown nosing, but I'm gonna cut you off there. I want to ask you one question. One question.
Yeah, fire away. Absolutely.
Have you had Blake on this show yet?
I have not, and I really, really, really want to.
I think you
really
should.
want to.
I think you should.
I
think
really
that would be
to.
Interesting. I think you and Bradley kind of prying in and cracking that nut open would be pretty interesting. He's an avid hobbyist, aspiring breeder. Yeah. He's right on the cusp, and he's done some things that a lot of hobbyists would never even dream of doing.
Wouldn't even consider necessarily.
And I think it's pretty cool. And he also is one of those people that has a lot of giftings and skills and stuff that probably a lot of your listeners could listen to. So you guys are all about pulling the good parts of people out on your show. I love how you guys do that. So I would love to see that.
I agree. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've been wanting to mention it, because I'm like, man, I want to expand this. I want to go beyond just people that even keep reptiles. Like I want to talk to people that maybe don't at all, because there's just so much information to exchange and so much energy to exchange.
Well, I think you can do it. I think you can still do it if you're connected by creatures and they still got the creatures or whatever the case may be.
We'll figure out.
He's got lots of cool creatures. You know what I mean? But
he's
a little different than a lot of the people in the industry.
Oh, he
probably a good person to know. All right. Well, thanks, Zach, and tell Bradley I said hey, and I love what he's doing over there with the party thing. I'm a little bit jealous that we're not there tonight. So.
Absolutely, man. Love you, man. And again, I love all of you guys that show up here every week, and all 30 plus of you guys. I mean, this has been a tremendous following tonight. Thank you guys for all of your time, and we love all of you guys that feel as though we are all connected by creatures.